Hey there, it's Steve from Serious Keto, and this is the Not So Serious Keto video podcast. Now, I had planned on having today be the release of part 3 of my Keto for Beginners series, and just that is not coming together as fast as I'd hoped. I know this is like the third week I've promised it, but, well, so I guess if I promise it again, it probably is meaningless at this point, but I'm going to really try to have that out next week. Additionally, I'm playing around with some other new equipment. I got a new microphone, another new microphone. So I got this Shure microphone. It's like a $300 microphone, really highly rated. And I've been using that lately just because I found that very often when I'm using the lavalier mic, it would pick up a lot of different noises that I didn't want it to pick up, especially chewing noises. And whenever I was doing a review, I guess, with Terry or Courtney, it's very difficult to get the sound levels right between the two microphones. I mean, some of it has to do with just my voice and the way that it carries versus my family, but then also where the mic is positioned on a given person's collar seems to have a pretty big impact. And it was just getting too difficult for me to try and deal with that in editing, playing around with the sound levels. So I went with the Shure microphone. Now the problem with that microphone is it's a mono microphone. And as a result, I decided I was going to get a stereo microphone. That way, when I'm doing a combo video with someone else and we're sitting at a table, you get that audio separation a little bit. I think it probably sounds better on a TV or monitor or something. I don't know how it sounds on a mobile device, but so I got the stereo microphone. I'm going to come over a little bit this way, and then I'm going to come over a little bit this way, so we'll see if it works. I've got it set on this real mini tripod, and there's no audio, I forget what they call that. I think it's called like a spider when you've got a mic on that's hanging, and that way any vibration it doesn't pick up. This does not have that, so I'm sure if I smack on the table or anything like that, you'll probably wind up hearing that. But that is it for sort of the technical get it out of the way stuff. Let's move on to the podcast, shall we? I tend to get a lot of feedback on my review videos. Most of it's positive, some of it not so much, and I get that people have differing tastes. So there may be instances where I like something that you don't like, and vice versa. It's going to happen. We don't all like the same foods, we don't all like the same flavors, we don't all like the same music or movies or anything. That's what makes life exciting. Well, one of the things anyway. But I think it's important to kind of learn what a person's tastes are, and then you can say, oh, well, gee, if Steve doesn't like this, I'm probably going to like it, or Steve likes this, I trust Steve, we have similar taste buds, I'm going to like it. But on the last review video that I did which was for Keto Bricks, some people I think that was the last one I did. No, Chalk Zero was the last one I did, now that I think about it. But when I did the Keto Bricks, there were some people that really kind of seemed to take it personally and thought that I was trying to do a hatchet job on Keto Brick or their owners, founders, whatever. And that's not the case. Not the case at all. In fact, I felt that we did 6 different taste tests, I believe. We were trying really hard to give Keto Brick a chance, and we didn't like it. I mean, mostly we didn't like the texture, but there were a couple that the flavor was just really off for us. But I want to kind of talk about reviews on a bigger scale. First off, when I review a product, I want to like it. I mean, I'm spending very often my own money to buy a product. I don't want to spend money on something and not like it and have to throw it away because it either tastes bad or it spikes my blood glucose or whatever. So I'm going in with a positive attitude. I'm never going in wanting to dislike something. So I want to make sure that everybody understands that. Sometimes I get feedback like, are you doing these reviews? I thought this was a cooking channel. No, this is a keto channel. I mean, cooking is certainly part of it, and there are times that I know you, and certainly I, wish it were a bigger part of it, but those are the toughest videos to do. And they're the most time-consuming, definitely. And even though I think that if you're trying to do keto as healthy as possible, you should be making your own food. But that's not always convenient. And not everybody has the aptitude to be a cook. Some people like the convenience factor of having bars or snacks or whatever it is. So I want to accommodate those people as well as the people who enjoy cooking and wouldn't buy any product with the label keto on it. So I would ask, if you're one of the people that thinks you should never buy a keto product, that you be a little bit more empathetic towards other people and understand that they may have a different lifestyle than you. They may not have a lifestyle that accommodates making all of their own keto food. They may be traveling a lot. Maybe they're a truck driver. These are people that I do these reviews for. And this kind of segues into my next topic, and I want it to be bigger than a topic. I want it to be a movement. I want to see what sort of power we have. Well, mostly you, because I'm just one person. You're 250,000 people, or however many watch this video, which will probably be like 5,000. But here's what I want to do. I want to get rid of dirty keto. And by that, I mean I want to get rid of the term dirty keto and lazy keto, and probably clean keto as well, just because I find it kind of insulting. You know, we're making these disparaging comments about a significant portion of the keto community by saying, "Oh, you're dirty keto, you're lazy keto." It's not especially kind. And in my mind, if you're doing keto, any form of keto, if you are in ketosis, if you are limiting your carbs, whether you're clean or dirty or lazy, you're still doing better than probably 95% of the population out there. And I also think that very often when people start with a dirty keto, and I know I'm using the term that I just said we shouldn't use, but I think very often when people start keto, maybe they're that, and as time moves on, perhaps they start seeing more health benefits to being a little bit cleaner. Now, the terms that I'm suggesting we use, unless one of you or multiple ones of you come up with better ones, are instead of saying dirty keto, maybe we call it flexible keto. We're just having a little bit more flexibility in it, perhaps in terms of how we manage our macros, what we eat, what ingredients we deem acceptable. The goal, though, is still stay in ketosis. If you're in ketosis, you're fat adapted, you're burning fat, you're getting ketones to your brain, so you're thinking better, you're smarter, I hope. And then instead of clean keto, we could call that strict keto. I don't think saying something is flexible or strict is in any way insulting. I mean, like if you're working out and you say that your form is really strict, that's a good thing, right? I mean, that's not an insult. So what do you think? Flexible and strict, or do you have an idea for a couple of better terms? Let's see what we can do. Let's see if we can flex our keto muscles and make this a little bit more welcoming in terms of our language. So following up on that topic of flexible keto, I almost said the D word, flexible keto versus strict keto, I want to talk a little bit about ingredients and ingredient labeling. I know I did part 2 of the Keto for Beginners series where I talk about that. If you haven't seen it, I'll link to it in the end card. But back when I used to work at GE, in addition to teaching and doing some very in-depth data analytics, I used to get called in when we needed, how would we describe it? I think facilitator has become overused a little bit as a word, but at GE, very often, differing business units will have conflicting goals and measurements. And this was something that came out of the Jack Welch era. He just felt it was sort of a corporate survival of the fittest. If you pit two functions against each other, it will force them to get stronger. But I guess not work together. Stronger. And as a result, sometimes it can really, really spiral out of control and get absolutely dysfunctional, where you've got people, CFOs screaming at each other from differing business units because you're screwing up our metrics, you're screwing up our revenue. And, it's close to fisticuffs. And that's when they would bring me in. And I would I would negotiate, I would act as an intermediary between business functions to negotiate a settlement that was satisfactory to both sides. And when I would set up ground rules, I would always start any sort of meeting that I did with ground rules, and one of them in the cases of these negotiations is you never say you guys, because just the term you guys is sort of like pointing. It's like you guys, you're saying you're different than us, we're not the same team. So I'd say you can't say you guys. But the other big one is pick the hill you want to die on. So that's a military metaphor. You can't die planting a flag on every single hill. You have to decide which is strategically the most important hill for you. And the reason I took so long to get to this point, and hopefully I'm getting to it right now, is because there are certain influencers, and thus then certain viewers of those influencers, that kind of feel like they need to die on every hill when it comes to ingredients. Thumbnails that talk about the single worst thing you can eat on keto, it grabs attention. And so I get why people do it, but you can't say everything is scary. If everything is scary, it really starts to lose its impact. And in fact, not everything is scary for everybody. Now, I've mentioned in the past, for me, soybean oil, that's sort of the one major thing. If I see that on an ingredient list, that thing is going back on the shelf. Because for me, it's like clockwork. I eat something with soybean oil and I start feeling it down in my knees. I feel it, in my elbows. I feel it in my knuckles. So for me, soybean oil, that's a big no-go. But that's kind of like my one hill right there. That's the one. And I think for other people, soybean oil may not be an issue. Maybe that's not the big thing. Maybe it's some other thing, something else that you've got an issue with. So as I believe I mentioned in part 2 of the beginner series, while it's very important to know what ingredients affect you and to police those ingredients for yourself, that we shouldn't be doing it necessarily for other people. So know what causes you inflammation, or what spikes your glucose, or what knocks you out of ketosis, or just generally makes you feel kind of crummy. It's important to know that. But you can't be afraid of everything, I don't think. For my final topic, I'm going to talk about men's health, which is something I haven't done for a while because I had my annual visit to the urologist. And I'll try and keep this as tasteful and as not TMI as possible, but we may still go there a little bit anyhow. So for those of you who have watched this podcast or listened to it back a couple years ago, you know that I had some serious time at the urology office because my PSA, which is the prostate-specific antigen or something like that, I know one of you will correct me if I'm wrong, but my number was high. And the previous urologist I have, he's retired now, he liked to do procedures. So we did a prostate ultrasound, and that's not enormously comfortable. But beyond that, there was also biopsies. So 12 different times, they take a little snip out of the prostate. And that was unfun. The results came back negative. So what do we do now? Can we just leave me alone? Nope, you got to go have an MRI, which is actually quite nice compared to having, the feeling of a mousetrap going off in your butt 12 times. MRI came back negative. I'm fine. At that point, the doctor wanted to do another biopsy on me, or multiple biopsies, and I said, no, we're done with that for now. And then I had this process called the UroLift, which is they put these little staples into your prostate to kind of spread things out and make it easier to go to the bathroom. And that took a little while to recover from. That was not a super duper pleasant recovery, but now here I am a year, 2 years later, and things are fantastic from a guy parts standpoint. But I had a blood test again, and the PSA came back high. So now I've got this new urologist, and I think he's just spectacular. One of the things he told me when we started was that he subscribes to the European urology model, which is not like let's just get in and start doing biopsies and things like that. It's a little bit more practical, a little bit more reserved. And he talked about how, prostate cancer, there can be really two variants of it. One is super duper mild, like just ignore it, leave it alone essentially. And it's not going to be an issue unless you live to be 120 years old. Now, these are his words. He's the urologist. I'm taking his word for it. And then you've got more severe cases of prostate cancer where you need to take more dramatic treatment options. But, the fact that he doesn't immediately see a high PSA and think it's time to start, going into my behind and snipping parts, that just thrilled me to no end. And we got talking about PSAs and how he says it's really one of the worst tests out there in terms of reliability or strong correlation. You get a lot of false positives. And he said that basically it could just be that I've got BPH, so benign prostate hypertrophy, I think. Again, I know if I get it wrong, one of you will let me know. And I'm just going to have elevated PSA scores. And he says, so long as the slope, as you get older, it increases. But so long as the slope is nice and steady and fairly shallow, not a problem. It's only an issue if it starts to spike way up. So I'm like, this is great. I mean, to have a doctor that doesn't immediately recommend surgery or a prescription as the solution is very nice. But then we still had to do the old DRE, so digital rectal exam. And he was talking to me as, we were talking about Connor and Jaden getting married in Hawaii. And he said, well, where in Hawaii are you going? And at this point, I'm leaning over the table with my elbows on it, drop trow. And as I respond and say, Oahu, that's when the finger happened. And I went, Oahu! Actually, that one sounded happy. It was not an especially happy sound. It was just sort of a surprise. You're not expecting that sort of mid-sentence. I hadn't really braced myself for that action. But it was kind of funny, I guess, in retrospect. And the whole reason I just shared that little segment with you, well, two reasons. One, I do get a lot of questions still about it, like how are you feeling after the UroLift? Have you had any more issues with your prostate, anything like that? So part is to let people know. The other thing is I'm just, I'm pretty transparent, and I kind of feel like you guys are family, so I share with you. I hope that's all right. But that is going to be it for this week's podcast. Like I said, I will include that beginner series video over here on labeling, and I don't know what I'll put underneath it. Hopefully something good. As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.